Okay, so Black Panther. Just a few statistics. So Black Panther opened up #1 at the box office, much like Marvel's other 18 releases. It far exceeded tracking and became the #5 opening of all time, and the biggest non-summer opening and also biggest non-sequel opening of all time. And if you want to hear all the other records it broke, just Google it. There's like 3 pages of it. The movie became a cultural phenomenon. It is now the highest grossing domestic superhero movie of all time, and one of the biggest movies ever. And it just came out like 3 months ago. So, really excited to talk about it tonight. So let's bring to the stage a lot of people that made it happen. Writer, director, and USC alum, Ryan Coogler. Wow. Wow. Producer and Marvel Studios head and USC alum, Kevin Feige. Production designer, Hannah Beachler. Editor, Debbie Berman. I've been here, I said it. USC alum and editor, Michael Shawver. The Oscar-nominated legendary costume designer, Ruth Carter. And newly Oscar-nominated director of photography, Rachel Morrison, who I believe is the first woman ever to be nominated for Best Cinematography at the Oscars. Kevin, you can attest to this. I have to say, we've been doing this for 4 weeks, and it's been amazing, and there's never been a response like that.
I just said that to Ryan, and he said, it's because I went here. I said, so did I.
I mean, you know, like we got a lot of SC up here, like Mike, you know what I'm saying?
Just Mike. All right, so Kevin, so you guys were developing Black Panther for a while, and you introduced him in Civil War. Why did you guys decide to introduce him in that film, and what was it about that character that made him right to sort of do at that time?
Well, you know, I've always said that the goal of Marvel Studios was to bring as much of the comic universe to life on the big screen, and Panther and Wakanda is a gigantic part of that universe. So you go back to Easter eggs in Iron Man 2, and Wakanda's on a map in the background of a scene in Iron Man 2. So we've been planning it for a long time. It all started to come together with Civil War. We were developing that story. Wanted a third party who wouldn't naturally gravitate to Iron Man or Captain America and kind of could give a shit about either one of them. And Nate Moore, our executive producer, said, how about Panther? And within a matter of weeks, Chadwick was on board, and we were writing him into the movie, knowing that he was going to serve a great purpose in that movie, but that would be the launching pad to finally doing the movie.
Cool. So, Ryan, you wrote and directed Creed, which is one of my favorite movies, and I think, did everybody work on Creed? Almost everybody on stage. So coming out of that movie, which was a critical and commercial success, I'm sure you got offered tons of stuff, and this is the movie you chose. Why Black Panther? Was this a character that meant something to you when you were younger?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I actually started talking with Nate Moore and Kevin before Creed came out. So it was never like a situation where I was like a bunch of offers in front of me and it was like, you know, Black Panther's the one. If that was the case, Black Panther would have still been the one. But I was actually talking to them, I think like while we were in post on Creed, and it was like an amazing, you know, it was an amazing opportunity. And you know, I always loved comic books coming up. You know, and I around that time I was really kind of dealing with my own identity issues and you know, kind of investigating this idea and being obsessed with this idea of like what it means to be, you know, what it means to be African American, what it means to be African, you know, and looking at issues of colonization and all these things, and you know, my mind was kind of in that place as I was wrapping up Creed, and that was when Nate and Kevin reached out and just kind of like knowing what how much I love Marvel's movies, you know, and meeting those folks there, it was absolutely a no-brainer. You know what I mean? It just became, you know, I knew it was the next thing I wanted to do.
Well, cool. I have just in terms of the reaction tonight and the reaction to the movie, you know, we talk about, part of the reason we do the series, I love movies, and movies are meant to be seen on the big screen and having that experience. And when I was in school here, we would take a yellow school bus to Westwood to go to the big movie houses to see films. And it was one of my favorite things, and I still go do that all the time. And it's not quite as crowded as it used to be. Like, you used to have to go up early and like wait in line for hours to like go see movies in order to get a good seat. And now you kind of can show up like 15 minutes before. And so we went to Black Panther opening night for that movie, and I think we figured it'd be crowded, so we showed up like 45 minutes ahead of time. The place was packed. We got shitty seats, and there was just this like energy in the air, and there was like a table out front of people checking in for like school groups that they bought tickets for to like come see this movie, and people were like, it was like the reaction star, were like standing and cheering, and it really, it feel more than a movie, that this movie just like meant something to people. And I was just curious, because there's a lot of you here tonight, what did working on this movie mean for you? And like, and when did you get a sense that this was more than just a film?
I guess I'm next.
Yeah, Hannah.
He's scooting back. I'm like, why are you scooting back? Okay, this is on. Well, it's a life-altering, you know, and yeah, you don't really think that way going in. And I working with Ryan, I mean, that's for me a no-brainer, and I knew when he brought it. I mean, I read about it and I was like, I see that Ryan's doing Black Panther, and that's. I know he loved comics. He always talked about it on Fruitvale Station and showed me his artwork on Creed and stuff. And so I was like, this makes sense. And once I started getting into it and we started going through it, and we traveled to South Africa and South Korea. I mean, it was just life-changing, everything. Just meeting everybody, Kevin, the day I came in for the meeting, I'll never forget that. And the biggest part of it was, I'll have to say this, Ryan hates when I talk about it, but it's more, to me it was more working with Ryan because of the environment that he creates on set, in the office, just every single day. And part of that for me was this, I've been a guarded person all my life, and meeting Ryan, it sort of opened up a new, I could let my guard down, and I became a more creative person, became a better person and better at my job. So, on this journey of Panther and sort of, asking ourselves what it is to be African, me like trying to figure out where I fit in, because I've always felt like a misfit, but working with Ryan, I've always felt like I fit in. So it was sort of a twofold, working with the people best in the business, Kevin, Victoria, she's not here, and
she wanted to come but decided she didn't like any of you, so she didn't show up. She was supposed to be here, she had to work.
And the way they embraced everything, it was such an eye-opening experience when you get to a certain level of and then it leaves me speechless in a little bit, but because I'm a little nervous still, and I'll tell you that usually I'm not. So, but so it was all these things happening at once, and figuring out the responsibility of it all. I guess in my mind, because I knew that was a big piece of it, and I had such support and such guidance, and the whole team was there. So it was a lot of learning about myself, and mostly just working with Ryan. I've just become a different person. I feel free to be myself, which you don't often get. So he is an important voice, but he's also just an important friend.
That's great. How about?
Did I even answer the question?
No, well, that was great. How about the rest of you guys?
I'm actually from South Africa, and for me, I mean, I grew up white people minority, and the thought of my fellow South Africans seeing a film that represented them just gave me absolute chills. I was so excited about the film before it was even a part of my reality, and when it became a part of my actual reality, it was just incredible for me, an incredible blessing and honor, and to see it so well received, and for people to feel that they could claim it and be proud of it. And South Africans, especially because one of our languages is spoken in the film, just really felt like the movie was made for them. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful, incredible feeling to help bring that to life.
I grew up as a huge comic book fan, and I've been a fan of the Marvel movies since they started with Iron Man, and having the chance to work with Ryan from film school, I kind of want to echo what Hannah was saying. Every movie I do with Ryan, I start at a certain place in my life, and at the end of it, I become a better person, and it is because he lifts everybody up and he lets everybody. No, I know, but whatever.
It's true.
But it's true because he wants everybody to have ownership over the movie. He believes everybody's story should be somehow told and filtered through him as a director. I mean, there were times during post-production where we would have a meeting with Kevin, Lou, and Victoria, the three-headed monster they have over there as the execs. In the best way possible, Kevin. And then we would show the scene to some production assistants later that day and see what they thought, because that's what matters to Ryan. This movie is for people, by people, and that's what he cherishes. But to be honest with you, every day I woke up like, I better not screw this up, and that's really just how I felt. And I'm kind of surprised I didn't. So we're good.
For me, it was a total immersive experience. It challenged me every day to think outside the box, to do more, to be more, to present this beautiful Wakanda, to research and think about everything. Every piece had to have meaning. I was definitely connected to everything that was worn by any character or background person in this film. I was involved with the principals and the background very, very personally, and I think it was because of Ryan and what he actually could communicate that this world was about. So it became a very personal challenge for me. I remember the first time we showed him the finished Dora costume laid out on the table, and I could hardly breathe. And Ryan takes his time and he looks things over very carefully, and I could hardly breathe because I said, if there's anything wrong with this costume, I'm just gonna faint. And he looked up and he said, it's good, it's good, it's good. So I was like, phew. So, it was very personal, and I wanted to honor African culture in the best way, in the highest way, like we'd never seen before. Ryan kept saying, I just want to do something different. I want to do something different. And I was there with him, wanting to do something better and something different.
I'm also very nervous about public speaking, so bear with me.
Rachel told me not to ask her any questions when we were outside.
We've already broken that rule.
I'm so sorry.
So I'm the opposite of Mike. I'd never read a comic book in my life, and the only Marvel movie I'd seen was Iron Man because Maddie shot it, Maddie Lee Boutique. So it was not my wheelhouse at all, but I know Ryan. It's the same thing, and it was like I knew from the moment, it's like if Ryan's doing a superhero movie, it's gonna have a message, and this is a chance, like what bigger platform to reach people than I know the reach that Marvel had, even if I hadn't been the Marvel moviegoer. Now I am, of course, I've seen them all. But I think it was the chance to have a message that could reach a larger platform, and like both Hannah and Mike and everyone who'd worked with Ryan before, it's a really special, unique experience. And for me, of course, the opportunity to shoot a big movie, which quite frankly, women haven't had that chance very often. Obviously the bar was set really high, and I also felt a huge amount of responsibility to make sure that door stayed open. And thank you to Kevin and everybody who took a chance, because for me, I didn't have, I was actually due in the middle of Creed, so I didn't get to shoot that film. So I was going from a very small movie to a huge movie with nothing in between, and that's really a testament to I don't know if Ryan was like, this is the condition, or if it was Kevin and Marvel being like, why not? But it's amazing, I think, that I was given that opportunity.
Yeah, I would say that for all of us too, because I felt the same way. Like when I walked in, I was like, I gotta come correct. I gotta come right, and just the amount that Kevin and Victoria and Lou supported us, who this was a new experience for, working on something of this size and scope. And you know, my first Viz Dev meeting, I just remember like shaking and like having to have 15 pre-meetings and all kinds of stuff. I just needed to be right. And at the end of it, just the love that came, you know, everybody said what they had to say and we all collaborated. It just, so it was also that experience. It's a film experience that is a once in a lifetime experience, I think, for me at this point in my life.
I talked a couple times over the weeks about our visual development process, which is very different than other places where we get together once a week with the entire team and see basically what was generated that week: costumes, set designs, keyframes, previs. And it's how we all collaborate, and it's how we all know what's going on. And as I said a few weeks ago, it was only after a number of movies that I realized it was an unusual process. It was the only way we'd ever done it. But the other thing we've talked about over I'm like the professor up here now, so because I've been here 4 weeks in a row.
No,
but
awesome.
Hiring filmmakers who have not necessarily done giant budget films before, but who have something to say and have a vision, and certainly Ryan fits that mold. Frankly, Ryan had, in a lot of ways, more accomplished than some of the filmmakers we work with coming off of Creed, which I think was the best movie of that year. But we always say, well, we can do that because we surround them with people who've done lots of big movies before. And it was Ryan who said, well, he was open. He didn't have any conditions. He said, I'm open, I'm open. But would you guys also be open? And I think there's some strong people that I'd like you to meet as well. And we said, sure, but thought, well, we'll have other people for Ryan to meet. And it goes for almost everybody down the line here. And Hannah was the first that we met with, and she gave by far the greatest production designer presentation we'd ever seen on a movie that really needed it, with Wakanda. By far the best. And we walked out of that room and said, no question. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I was going to say, when I first saw this movie, one of the things that struck me the most watching the movie and watching the credits was how many amazing women were on both sides of the camera on this. And for big movies especially, you don't... Yeah, let's have a big round of applause for that. Because I think, as some of you guys alluded to, especially on bigger movies, like, you get jobs because of the jobs you've had before, and like, you don't often see that. And looking back, like, Ryan, you've worked with a lot of these, or almost everybody here before. Was that something conscious that you wanted to do to hire more women in these posts, or was it just one of those things that just kind of happened?
I mean, honestly, like, everybody up here is, like, you know, the best people I've met at what they do. You know what I mean? Like, I met Rachel and Hannah on my first movie, and I was trying to hire, like, the best cinematographer that we could, you know, that we could find. Like, I didn't know Rachel, and if Roger Deakins would have been like, sure, I'll shoot your movie, he'd have been hired. You know what I'm saying? But like what we were, you know, what I was trying to do was just find, like, I was trying to make the best movie possible. I had this thought in my head that this probably be the last movie I ever make. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, well, let's make it the best it could be. And you know, and I met Rachel over Skype, and she was like, you know, she was amazing. You know what I mean? Like, so then, you know, and I went to go see her movie that she had just shot, which was called The Sound of My Voice, and she shot that film on a DSLR, like, before people were really doing that. You know, I went to go see it in the theater. I was like, I might have been the only person in there because it was at the end of the run. You know what I mean? And I just sat in there like, yo, if this person could do this with a DSLR, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we're good. You know what I mean? So when she said, when she said like, yeah, let's, you know, she said, yeah, let's go. I love to do it. You know, I was super happy. And with Hannah, like, you know, I never, you know, you had your moment with Hannah when she came in to pitch, but I had a moment with Hannah where, you know, we had actually found a production designer we thought we were gonna go with. It might have been Rachel's agent who was like, yo, I want you to meet with this other production designer. So I was like, you know, sure. And I'm Skyping her, you know, and she's like in New Orleans, and she's like, you know, talking to me about all this, you know, all this stuff. And she's like, well, I was thinking about Oakland. I've never been there, but, you know, I've looked at pictures of it on the internet, and then I kind of broke it down into these colors, you know. So she walks over to her wall and she's painted, you know, colors on her wall. And I'm like, yo, nobody's ever broken down where I'm from in the colors before. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, this is right. Yeah, no, this is for sure what it's like. And I'm like, yo, if she could do that from, like, Google searching, and, like, she's painting shit on her wall for a Skype interview, like, she's hired, you know what I mean? So it was, you know, So that was the hiring process, and then going through, you know, making a film with them, it just blew me away. Like, you know, and with Mike, you know, I've known Mike since I was here, you know, here in school, and Mike is just, you know, incredibly smart, incredibly hardworking, you know what I mean, incredibly collaborative, you know what I mean. So like, you know, it's really just like the best people. In my case, you know, it was the best people for the job, and you know, it starts from the top down. You know, like Mike talked about the three-headed monster. It's kind of like having three, you know, really talented, gifted, you know, workaholic older siblings. You know what I'm saying? It's Kevin, Lou, and Victoria. You know, and Victoria, you know, when it comes to post-production, but really and truly everything else, you know what I mean? She always has Kevin's ear, and she's just incredible. You know, she's just incredible spirit. You know what I mean? And so it's there at Marvel. You know what I'm saying? It was there on the film. It was there in the script, but it was really like, you know, I don't know if you can find somebody who's better at their job than Victoria. You know what I'm saying? It's like she's just the best person for the job, and it was just one of those things where I think we just really blessed to have these folks, man. And like Deb was the last one of them to join. You know what I'm saying? And Deb had just, you know, she was like fresh off cutting Spider-Man Homecoming, and she had like a week off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Yeah, like 2 weeks, like 2 weeks off. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, you know, you got to get in here. You know, you got to get in here like while this thing is moving, and it was like a high pressure situation. You know what I'm saying? And she just was, you know, from the first meeting, like Mike and I sat down with her, she just blew us away, and it's just incredibly sharp, incredibly talented. You know what I'm saying? And so we were just fortunate to have, you know, you know, specifically, this crew. You know what I'm saying? Whether it was male or female. You know what I mean? We just, like, it's incredibly special people.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, one of the things that I loved about the movie, and I think everyone else did, is that it's a big giant movie, but it also feels very personal, obviously. And it's like, what was so personal to you about the stories that you wanted to tell in this? Because I think it's really apparent when you see the movies that it is.
Yeah, I think you know, a big testament to Marvel. You know, when I first went and sat down with Kevin, you know, I was you know, before I even raised it, he was like, look, man, people say we make big studio comic book movies, but he kind of went through, you know, pretty much every film that they had done, and he kind of told me how that film was personal to that filmmaker. You know what I mean? And I had seen all the movies because I'm a comic book nut and I love their movies. So I'm like, man, you're absolutely right. I had never thought about how specific these films are to the filmmakers. And then I was kind of like, you know, if I was to do this, this is what I would want to make it about. Specifically, you know, what it means to be African, like, you know, African American identity versus, you know, people who are born and raised on the continent. You know what I'm saying? And eventually it became more themes that we would talk about. And you know, he was incredibly open to them. I mean, I feel personally connected to all of those themes. I think the biggest one is like the fact that T'Challa was taking on a job that he felt was too much for him. You know what I'm saying? And like for me, that was what this movie was. You know, like it, you know, every day it felt like, you know, it was too much. And then I remember, you know, one of my fondest memories and my fondest conversations I had with Kevin was like, y'all never believe this man works like every day. You know what I'm saying? But it was like the day before Christmas Eve. You know, I told him I wanted to talk with him, and he was like, man, come to the office, I'll be there. I think you were meeting with Peyton on like some Ant-Man stuff. And it was just me and him in the war room talking, and he was like, man, what you worried about? Like, you know, like literally, like, what's the worry? We started shooting like in a month, and he was like, what's on your mind? You know, so I was like, man, I'm worried about this. He's like, that'll work itself out. I'm worried about that. That's legitimate. You know what I'm saying? Let's go through that. You know, yeah. And it was like, you know, it was literally, and he was literally like, man, we gonna be fine, man. He was like, we gonna be good, man. This will work itself out. I made a bunch of these. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, yeah. You know, that was kind of his attitude. But I mean, it was every day. I was like, man, maybe y'all should check and make sure y'all still sane for letting me do this. You know what I'm saying? But it was that kind of feeling. So that's probably what I'm the most personally connected to in retrospect, because I felt like it was more than I was ready for at the time. You know, pretty much every day, and I was thankful that I had all these people who, I'll tell y'all straight up, are all smarter than me. You know what I'm saying? Like on my team to help me along.
That's cool. Well, Rachel, I'm gonna keep breaking my promise. So you were the first female cinematographer ever to be nominated for an Oscar this year, which is amazing. What? I mean, as a kid who loved movies and growing up and watching the Oscars every year, what was that experience like for you? And also, what led you to want to become a cinematographer?
I think everything that led me to want to become a cinematographer was everything that made the Oscar experience traumatic. You know, I've never wanted to be in the spotlight. I've always kind of been very content behind the camera. I'll answer that part first. I think just visual storytelling. I mean, I started with photography, and you know, was fascinated from a very young age. Like, you know, it's all I've ever wanted to do. And then at some point, I saw a film, I think in junior high or freshman year of high school, where I was just like, you know, completely blown away and moved and, you know, bawling, and realized that I'd never had that experience with a still image as much as I love still photography. And that was sort of, you know, at that point I probably still didn't even know what a cinematographer was, but it was like, that was my sort of foray into filmmaking and wanting to tell stories that I felt like could have, you know, that kind of an impact. The Oscar experience was, I mean, it was between, I mean, just the timing of getting nominated for the Oscar in conjunction with Black Panther releasing, I think within 2 weeks of each other, was pretty crazy. And I was like deathly ill the entire time. I think I got this sort of flu bug that everybody got and couldn't shake it for 2 months.
Were you, I don't know the math right now, were you pregnant then?
I was pregnant.
Yeah,
as
so
well.
you had a lot going on. All right. Well, Hannah, let's talk about the look of the film, because I think one of the really cool things about this movie, as opposed to some of the other Marvel movies, which are very sort of earthbound, is that you got to create this whole new world. That was a really cool sort of combination where it was African, but it was also like a culture that we've never seen before. And I like every time you're sitting behind me, and like every time there's like a shot of another set, I'm like, oh, it's so cool. I'm so excited to talk to you about it. What was your process and sort of the design and sort of like, you know, basically world building, like creating this world that we'd never seen before?
I mean, honestly, the first, you know, when I first started getting into it was when I was working on this presentation and really understanding, like I started just diving into, because I was like halfway in the comic world. You know, I love Marvel movies, like my son and I have seen every single Marvel movie. So I was really very aware of what all of that was. But the books themselves, I had never been a comic book person. My son is, so he kind of schooled me a little bit. But then I just started researching like everything. I wanted to know everything about Black Panther and going, and then starting to understand like what, you know, without really knowing anything about what it would be, what would I want it to be, you know, and it's allowing myself to be free in that way. Once we started going, and Ryan was in Africa, and he was sending me pictures of like, this is cool, and you know, TED Talks about tech, and pictures that he was taking on the streets of South Africa, and you know, as he was traveling around in Lesotho, and he's like, I love the blanket, I love this, and of the surroundings, and when we were just really, and we would just sit down and talk about it, and I knew we wanted it to be different. We wanted it to sort of represent, because there were the different tribes, you know, and it's also a representation of the diaspora, the Pan-Africa, you know, and also you want it to be really cool. So it's, I was scared to death. So, and one day I went into Ryan's office and we were talking about it, and I didn't really know where to sort of put my feet, like where am I starting with this? And he said to me, and I know this is, you know, working with an auteur, this is, you know, I know this, and he says to me in the office, he's like, you know, well, what's going on in all the buildings? And what street is this? And what kind of like, you know, what happens over here? And what are the stories behind some of these things? And I'm like, yeah, right, because every, you know, film we've done, Fruitvale Station in Oakland, that's his hometown, and then doing Creed and all the kind of, you know, research we did into just making Philadelphia, you know, but then that was the moment I realized, so this whole place needs a history. Like it became real big at that moment, because I realized like, oh, I need to understand all the parts of the town, and so I just dove in, you know, and I guess I'm a little eccentric and neurotic when it comes to that, because I can go over the top a little bit, and you know, I just kept going and deeper and deeper, and the whole prep time I just kept adding to it and working with Ryan about, you know, how we wanted everything to look. We wanted it to be high tech, but we really wanted to pay reverence to all the different cultures and all the tribes that we were referencing, and then all the things that I was looking at evolution. I wasn't looking at like, oh, let me just take this thing because it's really cool and then make it that thing. I was looking at, like, for the Dogon tribe, how would this have evolved over time? Like, and trying to find references in pre-colonialization era of different countries in Africa. So, I mean, the process was just one day at a time. One chunk at a time, one nervous breakdown at a time. Just kidding. One like, you know. But the biggest part about it was that you had so many people around me to help me with the process. As I kind of got into it, it really was like there was a certain freedom that I've never had. And I always thought in my mind, like, that would be less with, like, a company like Marvel. It's so big, and that, you know. But I had more. I mean, we would go into meetings, and I'd be like, oh, here's this thing, and here's this. And, you know, Kevin and Victoria would be like, that's really cool. And then pivot the Talon, for instance. That was first about being the old spaceship. I would never, or, you know, their old aircraft. It's not a spaceship. I never even thought about, like, that's what he's actually flying. And when Kevin and Ryan and Victoria, like, were like, why couldn't he be flying this? It just needs to look a little more aggressive and needs to be a little bit more modern because we made it. And it was things like that. That's how the Royal Talon came. I was looking at it for something completely different, but without everyone else. So that was a big part of the process. And there was a lot of trial and error and iterations of things, and just going to Ryan and, you know, he'd have a sign on his office that says, "Do not disturb writing." And I would just, in the morning, I'd show up in his doorway like, "Hey," every morning. He knows I'm nuts. So, and Nate would be like, "He can't be disturbed." But, you know, yes, he can. I'd be laying on his couch, like, you know, having some other problem that had nothing to do with work. But, yeah, he would be like, "Don't go in there." I was like, "I'm gonna."
Let's talk about the other design elements. Ruth, let's talk about the amazing costumes, because one of the things that I've seen the movie a couple times, it struck me again tonight because I knew you were coming and really looking at it, was just like how many different styles and different cool sort of costumes you got to design. And there's that shot where you know, T'Challa's coming back for the first time, and his mom's there and his sister. And I think Lupita is next to her, and they're all wearing such different costumes, and they just the ability to create such a wide spectrum of different things for this movie. Do you want to talk about that and how fun that was?
This is my first time working with Marvel, and it's an incredibly collaborative experience. There's so many elements of Wakanda and of the Black Panther film that were part of the design. There's a visual development department run by Ryan Meinerding, who designs the Panther suit and the Dora. It was that wonderful 500-page manual, Hannah, that you did about Wakanda that I tried to read from start to finish. But I did, and tried to learn all of the languages in it as well. But it's an incredibly collaborative experience, and I think it's unparalleled to any other experience I've had in my entire career. Ryan knew color palettes that he wanted, and there was just a lot of sharing in this experience, and then it kind of like plopped in your lap, you know, and it was go make this happen. And so you work around the clock. I feel like Ryan asked me all the time, "Hey, did I wake you up?" And I was like, no. But
did he wake you up?
He'd always say that. But you know, as far as the design elements and getting into the tribes and looking at the beauty of all the different tribes around Africa, that was like paramount to how we infused the culture into the costumes. And it was really a wonderful experience to take, you know, the Himba drapes and add that to the Dora and stretch the skin on the drapes and decorate them with trinkets and do some Maasai beading and all of those elements from Africa that we hadn't seen before and we hadn't done before. It was an incredibly exciting experience, and there was so, you know, Africa is such a vast continent with so many resources and inspiration to draw from. it just became non-stop. And I challenged myself every day to infuse beauty and pride, to do something royal, to do something really special. And I'd get a text from Ryan in the middle of the night or early in the morning, and he'd say, I need to see, X, Y, and Z, and we'd share those photographs. He was always on par and on time with, what we were all creating. So it was an incredible experience. My workroom was like a trip through Africa. We had Dogon masks on the walls. We had the blankets draped all over the place, and we were constantly reminded of what we were doing.
So, Mike and Debbie, this is the first time you guys have worked together. What was that collaboration like, and how did you guys divvy up scenes, or what was that process like?
So for most of actually all of production, and then some of the director's cut, I had another co-editor named Claudia Castello, who was a USC student, really unbelievably talented editor, brought so much amazing stuff to the table, but unfortunately she had to leave the project, and so we kind of had this void that needed to be filled, and we were working away, and we were looking to bring people in, and Marvel had recommended Debbie, who had just come off of Spider-Man, and we didn't even meet with anybody else. I don't think we sat down and had lunch with Debbie, and she just seemed like she was going to bring so much to the table, and a lot of hunger, a lot of passion. She really cared, about this, about these characters, and so every editor has different sensibilities, sort of different workflow, and we had to find a sort of a working relationship, but I think we all left our egos outside. I think and I could see a younger version of myself or other editors. If another editor comes in and wants to change stuff that I really liked, I could take offense to it, and I could be really defensive, but that's not what's best for the movie. And I think that Debbie and myself always go with what's the best for the movie, what's the best idea, and if she had a note of something I loved and it was a better idea, I would be dumb not to take it. The movie would suffer for it. And Debbie having we had to lean on her a lot because Ryan and I had never done one of these big budget movies before with this many special effects and this big a team, and when Debbie came in, she just kind of led us and guided us along the way, and it turned out to be an amazing collaboration.
Yeah, I was already a fan of Mike and Ryan's work. I had actually been at Sundance, and I'd watched Ryan win the award for well, he won a few awards that night, but I watched, basically, I was there the night both of their careers really began, and I absolutely loved Creed. And yeah, what Mike was saying, I think we were both passionate about everything, but precious about nothing, and everything, as long as the film got better, it didn't matter where the note or where the idea came from. But I think it was kind of sort of an instant kinship, and it was a really fantastic collaboration, and yeah, it worked out.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the cast. Another thing that surprised me when I first saw it is the movie's called Black Panther, but for a big chunk of the movie, the Black Panther is dead. And the void is filled by these amazing actresses and these amazing female characters that were such a part of the film. Do you want to talk about a little bit the creation of those characters and why that was important to sort of have them there? I mean, all those actresses were amazing.
The women in the film.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like Angela Bassett and Denai and Lupita.
Yeah, like it started from the comic books. If you read the run of the Black Panther comic books, it's some amazing ideas, and just amazing female characters in the books. So that was kind of apparent to us, like when we were going through it. But I think that it was also something that we knew was an opportunity to make the film different. Like in the comics, you have Dora Milaje, who is just this all-female guard, who kind of they've evolved over different runs. If you read the books, and for us, it was like an amazing opportunity. It was like, wow, we can have this element, which is something that we've never seen before. These African, this African country already, but then this military division that's all female. That I consider to be the best fighting force, in this country and possibly on the planet. That was something that we were really excited about. And as we got into the script writing phase, and working with my co-writer, Joe Robert Cole, we wanted characters to represent, different elements of the country. And that was kind of how, we honed in on Okoye, honed in on Nakia, honed in on Shuri, and then honed in on Ramonda. And it was like, when we got into the casting process, it was later on we realized it was like, whoa, like this might be, this is a unique thing to have, this many characters, this many women characters who are this, got this variety in age, you know what I'm saying? And none of them are in competition with each other per se, and that was something that the actresses kind of made apparent to us, like while we were shooting. They were like, "Oh, this is cool," and it was like, "Oh, it's not something we'd ever thought about." We tried to find a way to lean into it, but it starts with the books, and Marvel is really, was really supportive of us and hard on us in that way, you know what I'm saying, in making that the best it could be, because we knew we had something that could potentially be special.
Cool. So one of the things that I love Bond movies. And watching the movie, like this movie kind of feels like a Bond movie to a certain extent to me, and especially the casino scene and the scene with his sister in Q's lab, which was awesome. Did you grow up loving Bond films as well, or were you thinking about that at all, or is that just?
No, that was totally totally intentional. Like the first thing, the first thing that Kevin and Nate said, it was like, we look at all of our films and look at how they fit into different genres and give us different elements, for our universe. And they were saying we figured that Black Panther could be, our James Bond. And as soon as they said that, they kind of had me, I grew up at a weird time with Bond. It was like the Pierce Brosnan era. It was like but it was like, but it was cool. It was like GoldenEye. We would play the video game more than we watched the
Best video game ever.
Yeah. Like, y'all clapping for GoldenEye? Like the karate chop when you run out of ammo, run up on somebody, you karate chop the shove. Yeah, you had those films, Tomorrow Never Dies, and those films. But then it was Casino Royale, when it was like the reboot, Daniel Craig reboot, and I remember loving that movie, and I was finishing over at my film over at MGM. And they had those movies. So you would go to the office and you'll see Sean Connery linked up against Ashley Morton, big black and white. You know what I mean? So it was around. So when they said that, and it was also something that I hadn't thought of. You know what I mean? Like that's always a sign of a good meeting, when you go in there and somebody throw something across the table. Something that you never thought of and you instantly love it. You know what I mean? And that was kind of how that was. So when we got into writing the script, the James Bond element was always something that we were aiming for.
Cool. Well, in terms of that, I love the action in the film, especially the casino scene, which did feel super Bond, and the car chase coming out of it. You'd obviously done fight scenes in Creed and stuff, but you'd never done anything at this level. What was your approach to shooting action, and in terms of Mike and Debbie, you guys, in terms of cutting action? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that the approach up front was trying to find a way to make it feel unique, but at the same time give it scope, and that was something that we talked about, early on. Like, how can we make Panther's fighting style different? How can we make the weaponry of Wakanda different? You know what I mean? And then at the end of the day, you realize it's really just about storytelling. You know what I'm saying? And I think Mike and Debbie could kind of speak to that, because you get lost in all of the bells and whistles, and you're using previs and you're using some fight choreography, and sometimes it involves a second unit. You know what I mean? And some of those things were new to me. And Marvel's real great about helping guide you through that process. You know what I mean? But we often find ourselves in the editing room. And it gets right back to ground zero. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what's the story here? You know what I'm saying? Even though we punching and kicking everybody, what's this scene about? It's still a scene. I don't know if Mike and Debbie want to speak to that. And Kevin's kind of a whiz in the editing room too.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think sometimes people assume that cutting an action scene isn't an intellectual endeavor, but it's actually very complex, because you're trying to tell a story, you're trying to tell an emotional story and the narrative story, and make things look really cool at the same time. So it's really challenging to interweave all of those things simultaneously, but also a lot of fun, and you can really go in quite a few directions and feel emotional, but then think something's really cool. And for us, I think it was important to understand what was going on and not just have sort of fast cuts and get lost in it, but to actually understand like who did what and how do I feel about that.
Right. You know, I think with a lot of these fights and action scenes, it's when I go through the footage, I don't just look at the punches that look like they land or the cool flips or kicks. I look at the expressions on people's faces. I look at reactions. One great thing we actually learned on Creed when we first cut together the final fight. You know, it was cool. It was some punching and more punching and whatever. But it wasn't until we put the reactions of the people who loved the people that were fighting that it really came alive and really made you feel like you were taking the punches with them and going through that experience with them. So we kind of took that in the first Warrior Falls fight, where you know it's one-on-one. You know, you get the drop off, you get the door and everything, but really finding the place where we're going to show his sister, who's just giving him a hard time up until that point, who's really worried, because seeing that change in her is going to make you even more worried for T'Challa. Same thing with the crowd. Same thing with, you know, his mom, his friends, everybody. So again, and I think Ryan does this really well, and I think he does it with all the departments. From what I can tell, is that he tries to find the truth in every single moment, in every single thing, that costume, set, every shot, every cut. There's truth to it, and if it isn't, it doesn't belong in the movie. And we push and fight to find that truth, and I think that's why it can, whether it's an intimate scene with two people who just lost a friend, to a big fight with a bunch of people. I think that's why it all can resonate with people everywhere.
I think it'd be interesting to hear from Kevin too. Like, what makes a great action scene in your eyes? Because, you know, like you worked on so many different ones.
Well,
you know?
it's everything you've all already said. It's the bells and whistles are fun, and you want to have a level of spectacle, but it's the characters, and it's the moments, and it's the gags within that. I think one of the things we talked about in our Christmas Eve meeting was the way in which Panther ended up on the roof of the car. Just in terms of the, you know, getting into the nitty-gritty of the detail on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. So what that was at first, you know, I was thinking like James Bond, cool. You know, like he would, you know, he has this new suit where, you know, it's in his necklace. So we first pre-visit when he's like just kind of walking out slow, you know, and then everything comes off and you can see it all, and you know, you can see it all in slow motion, cool. And then Kevin was like, nah, man, you should throw it, flip and land on the car. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, so for me, I was like,
he walked out cool, the suit came on, and then he like climbed up to the top of the car, and it started going. That was the part that wasn't cool.
And Kevin got like good instincts for like, hey, yo, that looks cheesy. Like that little part when he's climbing up the car, that's weird. You know what I'm saying? And like, it would be that same way with costumes too. He'd be like, man, that little thing, that's, I don't know, we doing that? You know what I'm saying? And then it'll be, you know, so then for me it was like, wait, okay, so if he does this, and then what I realized in watching it later on, it was like, yo, he's in a hurry. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's in a hurry, man. Like, he's gotta do it fast, he's gotta get where he's gotta go. Like, the audience will respect him more for that. You know, and it's cool as hell, you know what I'm saying? Seeing him flip that, you know what I'm saying, flip that high. And I think it was, you know, it was moments like those where you know, where you will learn and push and come out with something real dope.
So let's talk about the music of the movie. I love the soundtrack. I love the Kendrick Lamar soundtrack, and some of you guys are walking out singing along to the songs when we were going outside, which is cool. How did he get involved, and how did you get him to write an entire album of original songs for this movie?
No, we laughing about something else, man. But tell him. So quick story is like, quick story is I had met Kendrick and Top, and a guy named Dave Free who works as who's the president of TDE. I met all those guys shortly after finishing up Creed. And it was one of those things where it was like, you know, let's stay in touch, you know what I'm saying, if we're working on anything. And I think I might have mentioned to them about this. And then later on they came in, and, you know, to the studio and sat down and we talked, and he watched footage. I think Kendrick and Dave like came by the editing labs. And they were like taking snacks and stuff. You know what I mean? Like taking, grabbing bananas and like
I didn't
twigs.
leave my edit suite for 7 months,
Yeah.
but those 5 minutes I was out. So
yeah,
I'm
Debbie was
so
gone, so I was like
upset
taking them in
about that.
everybody's room to meet everybody.
You
They
didn't
wanted
even
to
tell me
Debbie's
he was
gone, bring him
coming.
in.
they wanted to meet everybody and stuff, and they just kind of came and hung and ate snacks and watched footage, and then booked the studio and then made a bunch of music. They collaborated with Ludwig Göransson, who's our composer, who went here as well. He went to the composing school. But like a funnier story is like what we went through, like once the music came in, when it's like, we like, should we get it?
Yeah, he'd gone and listened to, nobody knew this album existed.
This was pretty late in the game, right?
Yeah, relatively. I mean, we were deep into post, and he went to go. Did you go to the studio? He went to Kendrick's studio and listened to, I don't know, 5 songs, 6, 7, 8 songs. Every time he went there were more and more. And he came back and he was sort of depressed. And tell them why you looked like that.
I was so like how it was happening was like they were working. We hadn't heard anything, and then I'm literally in the suite with Mike and Debbie. And then I get a text from Dave. He's like, "Hey, yo, come to the studio to listen to the music, like right now." So then I'm with Nate, and I'm like, "Nate, we got deadlines." He's like, "No, go." He's like, "Go listen to the music." So me and my brother hop in the car, and then we drive, we drove like to the other side of LA. It took us like an hour and a half, and I get in there, and then they play it for me, it's like Kendrick Lamar sitting right there in a tiny studio, and he's just like watching me while I'm listening to this music. And then my brother's like right there, and then me and my brother are just looking at each other like they're going song after song, and it's like, and I'm like, yo, this is like this music's better than the movie. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm like, if somebody came in and said, y'all gotta stop with the movie right now, put the movie out, put the soundtrack out. I'm like, yo, they gonna say y'all like the movie's, the soundtrack though is dope. So then I go back, and then Kevin and Nate's like, yo, how's the music? And I'm like, guys, we got a problem. I think it's better than our movie, you know what I'm saying? So that's why we was laughing about it. Fortunately, we had some more time, you know what I'm saying? But I told Mike and Debbie, I'm like, y'all guys, we gotta step it up.
Imagine how much money it would have been made if the movie had been even better. If it had been as good as the soundtrack. Well, I want to ask you about the composer, because I noticed that watching it tonight. And again, that's one thing that I always loved in Bond movies, where they took a little bit of the theme song and they incorporated it into the score. And you guys did that on this. How did the composer deal with that? Did Kendrick take some of the stuff from the score and put it in, or was it vice versa?
Yeah, they got a producer named Soundwave, who worked with who worked with Ludwig. Like they would hand materials back and forth. You know what I'm saying? So he had some of the elements from the score in the film, and they collaborated on 1 or 2 of the songs too.
Cool. Rachel, another question, because I know you enjoy them. You guys have talked a lot about colors of the film, and it's the movie's beautiful. I think from everything from the costumes to the look and to the to the design. What's your process, and how did you and Ryan collaborate on coming up with sort of the look of the film and the color scheme of the movie?
Sure, you don't want Ryan to answer that?
No, I mean, you can both answer it. It's such a beautiful film. I'd love to hear you guys talk about it.
I mean, Ryan had a ton of references, and one of the things that I think is always amazing is they're not, it's not a bunch of other Marvel movies. We looked at an episode of Chef's Table. We looked at Samsara, which is the Ron Frick sort of 35 millimeter 65 millimeter tribute to the world. We looked at photography and all these other things, and then when we started to break it down, I think we obviously wanted Wakanda to have a very different look than the Americas, than the UK, and the light in Wakanda to feel very different from the light anywhere else. And then working with Hannah, working with Ruth, and kind of figuring out what the palette was for each of the main characters, and then how we wanted the cinematography to reflect that. And VFX is a big part of these movies, so it's much more deeply than movies which are totally in camera. It's really you have to kind of figure it out beforehand, and then I was really going off of Hannah's drawings. You're lighting at times to things that don't exist, so it's kind of making the light make sense based on references that we've all come up with together, or that Hannah's come up with. making the cinematography work with the clothing design. I mean, one of the things I knew from my very limited VFX experience was that I really wanted to shoot blue screen, not green screen. So that meant going to Ruth and saying, hey, can you make this work so that we can shoot blue? Because I didn't want the green spill everywhere. And so that was, the collaboration just becomes very kind of intimate all the way down the line.
Cool. Well, I could talk to you guys all night, but I know we have a bunch of people that want to ask some questions. So why don't we open it up? Yeah, right here.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming here. This was an amazing experience. My question is for Ms. Morrison, if you don't mind. Mr. Kugler touched on the fact that the big action spectacles are all about drawing out scope, and what I've noticed both in this movie and in Creed is that that means drawing out the duration of the takes. How do you manage that both in pre-production and on set?
So the oneer, which I think started even as early as Fruitvale, but really, Creed was the sort of big oneer, and then we did several of them here. It was all about experiential cinematography, and it really comes from, I think the thing that both Ryan and I have always appreciated is really subjective perspective, where you feel like you're with the person that you're, if it's T'Challa scene, you're with T'Challa. If it's Okoye scene, you're with Okoye, and that you're really sort of, inhabiting their shoes, their eyes, everything else. In the case of Marvel, the blessing is that you can actually build the sets around the oneers. I mean, that's not a very common thing. And so, like, for instance, in the casino, that was, again, working with Hannah, working with our stunt team, figuring out what, we sort of figured out what the camera move was going to do, and then we actually had to sort of construct a set that would allow for us to do those moves. In another film, it would be much more just sort of lighting the space and then, kind of moving your way through it. I mean, I guess it's the same philosophy, but here it was just actually physically constructing a set that could kind of keep up with us, and in this case, it was obviously some cable cam and some bigger, kind of more complicated scenarios.
Yeah, right there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. All of you, especially Ruth, congratulations on your Icon Award. Like, amazing. Thank you. My question is for you, Ryan. There's a lot of USC Film School students in the audience, and I think this screening is very special because you went here. Could you talk about your experience in the program and how you feel like going to the program has prepared you for your future projects and this amazing film that we just saw?
I talk about it briefly. I love going to school here, and like the biggest thing that I found that it helped me with was just meeting collaborators. You know what I mean? Meeting people who I still work with to this day. I met Mike here, met Claudia here, who used to work with. Met Ludwig Göransson here, who's done the music for everything that I've worked on. Also does all the Childish Gambino's stuff. But I think that was really the biggest. That was really the biggest. The biggest thing that I took away was just meeting my classmates. I would say the second biggest thing was just learning how to collaborate. You know what I mean, and learning how to collaborate based around solutions. And respecting other people's opinions and positions, and figuring out how to work in any type of situation. You know what I mean? I felt like the school did a good job of putting you into that boot camp. In different circumstances, situations where you feel like the sky is falling. You know what I'm saying? But you still got to get your shot. You know what I mean? Or situations where where you really got to fight for an idea that you believe in. You know what I mean? And all of those things I'm very very thankful for. And I think it's not a coincidence when you meet other people that went through the same similar process. I feel like Kevin and I get along real well when it's time to when it's time to go. And we'll oftentimes reflect on our experiences at school. Like, when I took that class, was it like that? Oh yeah, And I think that there
were 20 years separating those experiences.
But I think that I think that those were the things that I took away. I'll say the most.
What would you say? There are specific courses or anything like that, or you're just like you don't remember anything about that?
I'm an old man now. Yeah, I remember. I mean, like Mike and I, first time we worked together was 546.
I production designed something for you in your directing
That's
class.
right, 532.
Yeah.
532. There you go.
They're just making up numbers. Yeah, over there.
I have a question for Ryan. So a lot. I'm sorry. so like, well, talking Ryan. So a lot of your projects are about people of color, and they're like the stories that are really special to people of color. And like you work with like a lot of talented white collaborators. Like, how do you put those stories in their hands and like trust them with those like nuances that are important to people of color that only people of color can understand?
That's an interesting question. I think that I think that for me those things are like oftentimes when it's the most exciting. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're working with people who aren't necessarily from your exact background. You know what I'm saying? But y'all come to find a common ground. You know what I'm saying? Like the audience is key. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, the audience is the end result. Without the audience, there's no reason for making a movie. And I don't want to like make films for segregated audiences. You know what I'm saying? Like I want the audience to look like y'all look. It's got to work for it's got to work for everybody. You know what I mean? So if I can't have a conversation with a collaborator who's from a different background, you know what I'm saying? Like then I'm not a good filmmaker. You know what I mean? And that's really how I came up. You know what I mean? That's not even something that really. I think that's something that makes the process stronger. You know, when you work with people that come from, different backgrounds and that see things through a different perspective. You know what I mean? So I think that's actually like one of my favorite things about the job. Like I've never physically been to New Orleans. That's where Hannah lives. We talk about it all the time, and I kind of traveled through that. Kind of traveled through that with her. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I feel like, talking with Debbie about what it's like to come up. You know what I'm saying? As a South African. You know what I'm saying? Like in a Jewish community. You know what I mean? And like what that's like. We would vibe over that. Like she'll spin around from the avenue, and we'll just talk about. You know what I'm saying? We'll talk about that. And that'll work its way into the into the film. You know what I'm saying? Me and Mike come from it's like literally the polar opposite sides of the country. You know what I'm saying? And I remember it was a conversation like when we were working on Fruitville, when Mike was like, "Yo, like when he asked me, he was like, yo, when you see the police, like, do you get worried?" Like, because we was I don't know if you want to talk about that, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, Fruitvale, kind of what I was saying before, it changed my life a little bit. In one way, there was a scene that was actually cut from that movie. It was Oscar was talking about how he didn't believe teachers who told him he could be anything he wanted, including the President of the United States, because he would look up at the poster and see that nobody looked like him. And I asked Ryan, like, is that really how people feel? And when he told me, yeah, it changed my life. I was absolutely floored. And I think I think it is those discussions. It is learning that we have way more in common in a lot of ways, being human beings, with the relationships with our families, friends, experiences. But we're also separated. And I think bridging that gap, through this art, and what Ryan said about the audience, it's about the audience at the end. The audience is diverse. So to have different diverse voices telling the story, and it's all filtered through Ryan. If Debbie or I pitch an idea to Ryan and it's not right to what he wants to do, we'll discuss it, but ultimately it's his decision. But yeah, I think everybody has a story to tell and something to bring to the table. And I think, again, if you search for the truth in the moments in the story, I think it can become something special.
I think just to chime in on that, a friend of mine who went to school here said to me recently, we were talking about something, and he grew up in Mexico, and he said one day, he's like, you and I could not have come from more different sort of backgrounds, but what we have in common is the movies. Like, we both love the same movies, and we grew up having the same sort of like cultural experiences. And I do think these guys touch on them. I always say that's the best thing you come out of this school is like the people you went to school with, and you're like, your friends and colleagues, and you hopefully come up together. Anyway. Just thought I'd chime in. Yeah, the first standing up over there.
Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate your presence here. I'm a recent alumni of USC. I actually just did an Afrofuturist shorts, and you guys are an inspiration to all of the students coming out here. My question is for Ryan. How did your preparation as a director change, going from, you know, short films to indie films, now doing a big budget film? And how do you handle that daunting task of directing so many different departments?
I mean,
What, Hannah?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, man. I mean, going to school helped a lot. You know, like with each, you know, with each project, with each class, the crews will get bigger and bigger. But really, just like learning what the departments are. The departments kind of grow a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But like they don't really change. Like if you know, you on a short film, you know, you got your production designer, you got your AD, you know what I mean? You got your editors that you'll work with, you got your costume, you know what I'm saying? Like you know, and the bigger your sets get, the more people are there. But those key crew positions don't change. I think like the bigger you get, you might inherit a second unit, you know what I'm saying? Or you might inherit a VFX supervisor who has to play a more, you know, key role than they might have played before in a smaller film, you know. But I think that you know, it grows exponentially. The pressure grows for sure, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you grow as well to be able to, you know, to be able to handle it and deal with it. And the folks who you're working with studio wise makes a big difference, you know.
I'm going to say something real quick about that, because when I first worked with Ryan on Fruitvale, I had done, by that point, maybe 3 or 4 small features as a production designer. And so I had been on shows with, you know, decent-sized crews, and when I worked with Ryan, it was his first feature, but I'd seen all his shorts. And what really took me, I think that what really drew me in was that when he was working with, when we brought the props people in, when we brought, when the costume designer came in, when I came in, you know, Fruitvale was small, but he sat down with everyone. And I remember him distinctly saying to the prop people, and I was in the room, and Aggie was there, a costume designer, and he said, you know, they started breaking things down to him, and he said, you know, he's like, wow, I didn't really think about all of that coming along with the props, like reading props as a story. It's not just like he holds this and then the next scene is he does this, but the prop people brought all of this story to how, you know, Oscar collected the bag. Like, well, they were asking him all these questions. And the thing that I think really separates Ryan in a certain way from some of the, you know, first time, you know, indie directors that I've worked with is that he took the time to sit down and listen to them, and then make whatever decision he needed to make about it, right? Like, and he did the same with me and the same with everybody. And he was very humble in that fact that he was still learning, you know? And we were all still learning, really, but we were working with some veterans, like Aggie Rogers and the prop people at that time were veterans. So I think that, and he's carried that on from Fruitvale to Creed to Black Panther, is that he listens to all of us, and we all have some type of ownership, like Michael had said before. But I think it's really important to understand, to hear them, make a decision, and that's part of collaborating, but letting people bring something to the table and then making a decision really quickly.
Yeah, I would even say Ryan insists on honesty, because I think you get into the habit of the film industry, instead of stating your opinion, you state it like a question. So it'd be like, perhaps, maybe this, and he's like, are you saying you want that? Like, and by insisting on honesty, it just allowed you to not worry about treading on a delicate ego. You could just say how you felt without worry, you know, being concerned that the way you phrased it might step on someone's toes, and it made the movie better, being so open to collaboration and embracing sort of everyone. I mean, our PAs had some like great, you know, things to offer that helped make the film better, and that's one of the incredible things about working with Ryan.
Well, I know we have a lot of questions, but it's getting late for these guys. Who has one great question? Oh, that person feels very confident about their question back there, yeah.
Hi. My name is Ebony Johnson, and first I want you all to know that
We always talk about Black Panther as like much we love him, and even the villain, like Killmonger, everyone loves him. But the Dora Milaje, they were only supposed to be represented for like a short period of time at California Adventure, but they have lasted longer than they probably ever will. So I want to say thank you, because I wanted to know, did you ever think that they would have such a positive influence on not just women everywhere of color, but women in general? Because here's the thing, so many young kids who have cancer, or people who never thought that they could see themselves surviving past that, look to the Dora Milaje as like an example of power and being bold and beautiful, and that they can survive past all that. Did you ever believe that, yes, they would hope, I'm so sorry, I'm losing my track of thoughts because I'm so emotional about it. But did you ever see them as being such a positive influence to the point where, I don't know, maybe the question really is, will they get their own storyline?
As far as that question, you gotta talk to. I think that like to answer your first question, like did we know? Like nah, man, we had no idea what the film would do. Like the thing is, like you never know. Like I would talk to Kevin. You had made like 18 of these movies like before we had made this, and he'd be like, he'll say all the time, man, you never know. You know what I'm saying? Like. Like when he'll talk about when they were making Iron Man. You know what I'm saying? They didn't know what it was going to be, and at it'll launch. You know what I mean? Like this whole 20 film and counting journey. You know what I mean? But I think that for us, for a long time, and it takes a long time to make these movies. All you have is yourselves. Especially before you start sharing it with audiences and stuff. And it's like, yo, is it working for you? You know what I'm saying? And I remember the first time that I saw the Dora, in costume, you know what I mean, and walking through Hannah's set, you know what I'm saying? Like I remember the first time seeing them getting extremely emotional, and I knew those, I knew those women. We had to search the whole world for them, you know what I'm saying, to find them and get them fitted. But seeing them for the first time, it took your breath away in person, And you never know if the audience is gonna have that same reaction, but we knew that we did. We would talk about it, and then like Hannah and Rachel, and we had and Ruth, and we had an AD who was terrific named Lisa Satriano. They would say like, "Hey, where your door?" You know what I mean? And they would run up the hill when we were scouting or something. You know what I'm saying? Or like take a picture together. So I was like, okay, they like it. You know what I'm saying? Like they got pretty good taste. So you just kind of go with that. And Kevin would say, "Oh man, that's cool." And Victoria would love them. But as far as did we predict that people would take to that part of the film like they did? I mean, it's no way that you could. There's also no way I could predict what movies get made in the future to bring it full circle. But we can hope.
Well, as they sort of mentioned it, I know nothing's been announced, but have you guys started talking about another Black Panther?
Active negotiations with Mr. Coogler as we speak.
Well, on that note, well, guys, can we have a big round of applause for these guys for coming down here tonight? And also, can we have some big applause for Kevin Feige, who's come down here every week for the past 4 weeks to bring these great filmmakers and tell these great stories to you guys. So thank you all for coming.